This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
Hello everyone and welcome to yet another round of RaceSport TV Friday primetime, streaming live here on the iRacing Esports Network. We are into double digits. Round 10 here for the Formula Renault 3.5 Championship. I am Connery Maddock, and joining me in the commentary booth as ever will be Will Vincent. And this time around for round number 10, well, we are at the Virginia International Raceway, a track that's not often used all that much here on the iRacing service, but can play host to some fantastic racing. The biggest series that goes here in real life will be the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, but this time, well, it's open wheel action.
It is, and this track, of course, has played host to the iRacing World Championship Grand Prix Series in years previous. We've seen some interesting races over the years. We once saw Martin Kroenke and Gregor Hutu coming out of pit road side by side. This was just when Martin Kroenke was beginning to get himself to the top of the iRacing World Championship mountain, but more importantly, Connery, you're back.
Yes, I'm back. I've had a very, very busy weekend, all things considered, commenting on a few live events here in the UK, but I'm back here in the RaceSport TV commentary booth and ready for sim racing action as opposed to Counter-Strike.
Yeah, indeed, sir. I thought you were going to talk for longer there, but it's okay. We got lap times up. Morgan Moran, well, he's still doing what he was doing before you went away, Connery. He's still leading in terms of qualifying.
Yeah, exactly. He's leading in terms of the points as well. So that is slightly concerning for all of his competitors behind, especially the likes of Riku Alatalo, who's not part of this race. But the thing is, we're still pretty close here in terms of the qualifying. We've got, of course, Morgan Morand on pole position, but we have Danny Garcia-Filo, who is not too far away at all. That is going to be a 300th of a second behind in terms of the qualifying times, but it looks like qualifying is basically just about done here, as we have 5 minutes and 50 seconds elapsed on the session. Ollie Poker might be able to get himself a lap in. Instead, he decides to abort it. Matteo Calistani, the only person coming down the back straight right now, the only person out there on track in terms of the qualifying, and he has not set a lap time yet. So unless he can get this one in, he is starting right at the back. Yeah, indeed. So he just worked himself down Madison Avenue. Final couple of corners. Matteo Calistani, number one machine, does not want to start at the rear of the field. Always start towards the pit wall to get the maximum angle of attack at the end of this one. And Matteo Calistani. Oh, up to 4th. That's good. Yeah, that is a pretty good lap for the number one driver in this entire field. That does mean that he is the highest I rating in this entire field. So perhaps around about where he should be in terms of the qualifying standings. But if you look at the times specifically, that tells a little bit of a different story, because, of course, you have the front two, which are very, very close. Morgan Morant and Phil separated by 300ths of a second. And then you look back further, 2.5 tenths of a second off pole position is Zagretti, and then almost a full second is Calistani. There's a huge gap between your top three and the rest of your field. The overall field as well is separated by 3.8 seconds. We talked about this before we went on air, Connery. There's only a handful of drivers, I think about 30 odd, who actually signed up to take part of this race. So we've got 2 fields of 15, one of them you'll never see. But because of that, the field spread here is wider than what you'd have at some other tracks. And the thing is, because it's a very narrow track, I'm just on the calculations in my head, 4 seconds a lap will mean we will see drivers go a lap down on this event. But it's so narrow track, especially through sector number 1, where you cannot get held up by traffic. Yeah, it's a track that really does sort of take no prisoners. Of course, you don't have much room in terms of the runoff on any of these corners, in fact. And, well, if we have multi-class racing here like we do in the IMPS WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, then the traffic through the first sector is particularly fiendish. Hopefully these guys won't have too much of a problem with the cars being a lap down. But this is how your qualifying grid is going to look. Morgan Morand will start pole position by just a couple hundredths of a second from Danny Garcia-Fillol, and then Giorgio Zigretti will line up in P number 3. Matthew Calistani, right at the dying moments of qualifying, gets himself up onto that second row of the grid with Stephen Gatesman and Vicente Salas running out row 3. Rob Rower and Petri Cottovaro will bring things down to P number 8 on your starting grid, with Claudio Candio and Ivan Hernandez bringing things down to 10th. Then Noroikan, we've got Levoska lining up P11 and P number 12 as well, with Pablo Rivera Suarez in P13. Ollie Kvoka lines up 14th with Tim McIver in P15. A very, very small field for you here today, but hopefully the action isn't as small as the drivers will take themselves to the starting grids. What are you expecting for the first portion of this race, Will?
Incident early on, driver settled down. Morgan Morand getting an advantage early, maybe being chased down the last few laps.
That could be the issue. Maybe it's a similar sort of situation to what we saw with the races between Morand and Atolu, but the thing is, maybe Danny Garcia-Fillol can fill in for the Finnish driver in this particular event. We've got a maximum of 30 seconds to go before we get ourselves the green light out there on circuit. We are just waiting for Ollie Kvoka right at the back of the field to get himself to the grid so that we can get this one started. A decent run down towards turn number 1 for these guys to get their positions, at least in the early stages, sorted. But then, from that point forwards, it is a very, very fiendishly difficult racetrack. Finally, we'll get those 3.5-litre engines all revved up. And we'll go green flag racing here at the Virginia International Raceway. Very, very good start for pole position for Morgan Morand. But here comes Zigretti then. Good start for P number 3 down towards the inside of your P number 2 driver. We almost had 3 wide for the race lead through turn number 1, but they all managed to survive. Zigretti's up into P number 2. Now Calistani is getting into the thick of the action as well. Challenging from P number 3, from P number 4 on the grid, but he's going to get crowded out when NASCAR Bend arrives. And that's the opportunistic move down the inside for Stephen Gatesman to gain himself a position by the time the end of the first sector arrives. They're coming up through Snake right now. Everyone's single file instantaneously. Yeah,
and what a start by Morand, but also what a good start by Giorgio Zigretti in the number 3 machine. Moves himself up 1 place early on in this event, and that's a good run by him. But now it's all about settling it down, calming those nerves. It's a 22-lap race here as they head themselves through Oak Tree Corner. The real Oak Tree doesn't exist, Connery, but of course we can preserve it for eternity on iRacing.
Yes, we can. That one isn't going to get removed anytime soon, of course, unless iRacing does decide to rescan this particular racetrack. But coming towards the last half of the first lap here, still Morgan Morand is the driver that leads from Giorgio Zigretti, and then we have Danny Garcia-Fillol, who's actually dropped off the back of the leading pair because of his woes a little bit earlier on in the race, coming down into those first couple of corners. So he needs to get his head screwed on a little bit better and just try and chase down these two right at the front of the field. And here comes the more important point, though, is does Giorgio Zigretti actually have the race pace of Morgan Morand here? He was 2.5 tenths of a second off in qualifying, but if that gap is a little bit less here in the race, especially with the draft effect, especially with the DRS, he might just have a chance.
Yeah, and the DRS, I think, will be the big difference maker here today. The key thing for Zigretti is almost not to get too aggressive with that early. Allow the race to develop and allow it to come to him. This section of the racetrack now, the Snake, from 5A all the way through the left, the right, the left again, and then the sweeping right-hander, and then this final bit here, which is really complicated in the best of times in a GT car, a little bit easier in a high downforce car, but the gap's up to 1 second already. Zigretti can't get too impatient. Of course, now we'll have a good run on the exit of Oak Tree Corner to try and use the draft to gain some of that time back.
One of the most difficult corners on the racetrack. It's we saw in, I think it was the iRacing Pro Qualifying Series, when I did that for what was the iRacing World Championship Grand Prix Series. Multiple drivers over the same couple of laps just completely got their braking wrong down in towards turn number 12 of Oak Tree, and then just found themselves inside of the tire barrier on the exit of that corner. We have had problems, though, with the number 13 machine of Ivan Hernandez. And is that coming down into Oak Tree corner? No, it's just before Oak Tree corner. Gets himself up over the grass and over the curb and finds a tire barrier, just not where I was talking about.
Yeah, so let's have a look on board, shall we? The replay with Hernandez in the number 13 car. Left-hand flick, just puts that car wide onto the grass, and he just can't get it turned around afterwards there. So a bad run for Hernandez, and he really just got that car onto the grass, and as soon as that, well, happened, realistically. You go ahead, Connery.
Calistani has run into a couple of issues. He's had to spin that car back around. And where was this? This was down in towards turn number 1, lap number 3. You can just see he looks to the inside, maybe of Stephen Gatesman, and Gatesman just loses it all on his own, directly in front of him, and then comes back across the path of Calistani, tags him around in the middle of traffic as well. That is not Calistani's fault by any means. He basically had nowhere to go, and the way he did, he's going to get tagged around anyway.
Yeah, there's the spin, there's a moment, and then Claudio Candio. I just want to go and have a look at him, because he is now classified as out of the race on pit road. So we're keeping with it for Claudio Candio. When does he have his incident? Calistani almost at the rear of the field. Did Candio and Calistani make contact? No. But Claudio Candio has, he just goes off right into the tyre barrier, and he just had a loss of traction by the looks of it there.
Yeah, we've had further problems as well. Stephen Gatesman out of the event after contact with Rob Boer. So Gatesman can't get enough of the contact here, or perhaps he has, since he's down on towards the pit lane and won't be out anytime soon. Gatesman, that was just before Oak Street corner. It's the same little piece of racetrack where Ivan Hernandez had his problem, but this time it is outside influence for Stephen Gatesman as Rob Boer ran into the back of him coming up through there. So we've had a good couple of early casualties here in this one. Our 15-car field has become a little thinner.
It has, and that's the whole thing. This track at the best of time does have high attrition rates, but when you end up with a couple of drivers having incidents early, it can make this race a bit of a procession. Everyone just running against themselves and the lap counter more than anything else. We're having a look at Petri Cotovara as Rob Boer is on pit road, as well as Matteo Calistani. Looks like Calistani is going to come out of pit road, so a new front wing. No, Calistani's still on pit road. Boer has come out 11.5 seconds for him, and he will come out and away. Matteo Calistani does come out, but get this, these guys are almost going to risk being lapped now.
Yeah, exactly. They will keep on the lead lap just for now, but they're definitely under threat of going lap down by the time the end of this race arrives. But the battle that we're looking on board with right now is the closest battle that you have out there on the racing circuit right now. Petri Cotovara versus Vincenzo Salas. So the Finnish driver versus the driver from California. Up in towards the roller coaster section of racetrack, 14, 14A, 15, and 16. And its name basically just describes what that feels like for a driver.
Well, it's horrible, yeah, the roller coaster. And of course, just at the point you get yourself settled down, you end up coming past the final couple of corners. Hog Pen, turn 17, turn 17A, and then all of a sudden, it's short straightaway. A bit like Monaco, this track, you don't actually end up in a situation where you get a breathe on the front relay, because immediately you're back into turn number 1.
Yep, exactly. The pit straight is arguably the shorter of the 3 straights that you have here, because you have the straight from Snake Corner, or Snake sequence of corners, 6 and 6A, all the way down to 7s, 8 and 9, which aren't really corners, since you don't have to do anything special in terms of lifting out or in terms of the brakes down into there. And then you have the back straight all the way from Oak Tree Corner down towards Roller Coaster as well. Those are the big portions of the racetrack where you can actually use the DRS activations that you are allotted here in these Formula Renault 3.5. Zagretti a little bit loose coming off of Oak Tree Corner, and that's not really a place where you can afford to be a little loose, because that's going to compromise your speed all the way down this very, very long back straight. Zagretti, he's just dropped outside of a second to your race lead right now, whereas he was within about 0.8 of a second just a couple of moments ago. Yeah,
indeed. So as that battle for the race lead, it still remains within a second, however. So it's not as if it's going to be the kind of quote-unquote end of the world. Oh, it's Segretti really over the curbs there, down at Hogpen Corner. That was almost catastrophic, but ironically, he does gain 2 tenths of a second over Morand as they work onto lap number 6.
He does. 9 tenths of a second was the gap across the line. Segretti, you can just see he's really working that car around the racing circuit right now. He knows that he has to pull out all the stops here if he's just to even catch up to the back of the Frenchman in front of him. And again, a little bit of a twitch coming off the NASCAR bend as well. Segretti is pushing, even though you could say that this is still early doors.
It is. Behind, Ali Quokka, Antti Lavoska, Club Diat and Club Finland going at it right now. And Antti Lavoska in the number 6 machine, putting the pressure on Ali Quokka in the number 9 RaceSpot TV sponsored car. We'll just let you know that one. But Antti Lavoska, as he comes through the snake, I mean, he is losing a bit of time here. But this is a part of the track, Conor, where you really need to have the downforce working on your car. You need to be able to have the lightning fast reactions to handle one of these Formula Renault 3.5s.
You do. They can get very, very sketchy indeed off the corners on the traction phase of the acceleration. It's not the most well-behaved car in the universe. So you do have to be a little bit careful in terms of that one. Lavoska still trying to chase down Ali Quokka. The thing is, the gap is still around about 8.5 tenths of a second on the way down to Roller Coaster. And it's just going to be a case of how many DRS activations has each driver, well, will each driver save? We're not even at the halfway point in this race so far, but what has closed down, though, is the battle for the race lead, because Giorgio Segretti, within half a second now of your race leader, all that hard work is starting to pay off now for Segretti.
Yeah, indeed. So the gap's come down by about 3 tenths of a second, of course. So this is the part of the track where things will start to eke out a little bit, because we talked about the fact that it's a part where the aerodynamic grip is so important, and therefore following a dirty air car might become more complicated as they work up the hill again. Actually, Segretti staying within 7 tenths of a second on Moran for the first part, but this is where normally you lose a tenth of a second due to that dirty air. I think Segretti is in that sweet spot right now. He's not losing any time as they head themselves now towards Oak Tree Corner.
Yeah, exactly. Just under 8 tenths of a second down into here. Segretti looking for some good traction off the corner. This time he doesn't step the car out at all, so he's able to sit in that slipstream all the way down the back straight now. Gap is going to go up, in fact, as Morgan Moran tries to defend. Maybe a little bit of an activation of DRS there, as I will just sort of put out my weekly request to iRacing to let us see in the API the DRS activations and the ERS states for the cars that have ERS on the overlays, because that would be absolutely fantastic. Yeah,
not only for this, but of course also for the McLaren, as well as for the IndyCar, the Verizon IndyCar, of course. So the NTT IndyCar, it's going to take me a while to get used to that, but they have that on their road courses as well.
Yes, they do. Gap up to 1.2 seconds, though, between your race leader and P2, so that one's going to start to stretch out a little bit. But we do have a little battle a little bit further back, though, on board with the number 9 of Ali Quokka, and he might just have an opportunity here coming down on towards turn number 1 on Antti Lavoska. Does he go left? Does he go right? He's in 2 minds, so am I. But down to the right, he will decide to go and then back out of that one instantly. But Lavoska's run the corner out a little bit too far, just a little bit. Quokka is getting a huge amount of oversteer off the corner there in that number 9 machine. He's just very, very sketchy indeed. You can just see he was in 2 minds for that move coming down in towards turn number 1. The door was open, but didn't commit.
Yeah, and we're on board from the rear of Antti Lavoska right now. He will get a bit of a brief reprieve so long as he stays on the racetrack, because Quokka will be very difficult for a driver to overtake here. By the way, ahead of Lavoska, we've got ourselves Yunus Nakarian in the number 7 machine. A lot of Finnish and a lot of DX drivers we got ourselves here today. So a little bit of that World Cup fever starting a little bit early ahead of Nakarian. Though we've got ourselves an American from Club California, Vincente Salas. I do like the fact that even though a lot of people don't necessarily like this track, it's also one of the ones that not a lot of people own in particular as well, Conor, especially newer members. This track was one of the earliest on the iRacing service, and not a lot of new members own it because not a lot of members run it.
Yep, exactly. It's well, this is going to be a British reference, so I hope at least some people will get this one, but it's really a Marmite track, or if you're American or Australian, a Vegemite track, or whatever you want to call it, whatever the phrase is where you're from. It's either people love it or they just absolutely hate it. So, which is why it doesn't really get on that many schedules on this iRacing service. So to see it on the Formula Renault 3.5 calendar, that is certainly a very interesting one. We have had to change position though, because Vicente Salas has had a problem in that number 15 machine. Just coming through the first sector, up towards turn number 1, just gets out wide a little bit, not able to find the traction off the exit of the corner either, just spits that car towards the grass.
Yeah, let's try and get ourselves a replay, shall we? Oh, Vicente, this is towards turn number 1. It's a very long right-hand corner, you're right. It's a little bit like Lime Rock Park. I really don't like that first corner because it tightens and it slowly opens up. Catches the car, and the back end just steps out there for Vicente Salas in the number 15 regime. Comes back on track, does avoid a car as he comes back on. And of course then the next corner NASCAR Bend isn't me, or is turn 1, 2 and 3 very similar here compared to Lime Rock Park.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, because I had the track map up in front of me, and I'm just like, yeah, that does seem like a very, very similar layout to Lime Rock Park. Of course, there are slightly more left-hand turns on this racetrack than on Lime Rock Park.
Slightly more turns.
But yeah, I mean, I guess you could just say it in general as well, but on lap number 10 of this one, only Quokka still on board with him, still trying to chase down Antti Lavoska, whereas Quokka has been very, very aggressive. I've been watching him over the past couple of laps. He's been very aggressive with those DRS activations, but he hasn't sort of had any results from them so far. So that might put him in a sticky situation when it comes to those final couple of laps, whereas Lavoska might have some to be able to defend.
Yeah, indeed, as we're on board still with Quokka, let's have a look as they work themselves on the exit of Oak Tree Corner. That's not Oak Tree Corner. That's not the corner I was thinking of right now. We're looking on board from the rear. But say these two drivers, they're kind of really... Oh, I say that. That's a huge puff of smoke that time by Lavoska.
Yeah. Just towards the end of the first sector, they're struggling to get that car slowed down. Might have just given a little bit of advantage to Ollie Foka. He's been using DRS, in fact, on this portion of the racetrack. Even though there are slight left and right-hand turns, somehow that car still is able to grip up, even with the DRS wide open now, down towards Oak Tree, and not going to be in a position to be able to challenge. But that's something that Foka has found out. You can actually just keep the DRS open coming through the SS section, because usually you would have thought in any Formula 1 car, the DRS open, you can't, it's a risk even trying to turn the car. But the thing is, Foka has found out that the car does stick when with DRS open coming through that section.
Yeah, who was it? I think it's at Monza, just trying to get ready for the corner, and the DRS just didn't open last year in Formula 1. And it's one of those things. Just to let you know as well.
Close, yeah,
it didn't close. That's what I meant. It wouldn't be an issue at all if it didn't open. The top 8 on the bottom of your screen. This is what I talked about. The race spreading out quickly. Your top 8 now separated by 23 seconds at the halfway point of this event. We've got ourselves 4 drivers out already. This is one of the things about VIR. It's a very good track to test that. It's a very good track if you're doing a very long race to keep yourself entertained. Of course, we used to do the Targa Virginia with Jacob Desmarais, and he always loved this track on the Grand West course. But it's a bit like the Nordschleife the rest of the time. A sprint race here doesn't really work.
It doesn't, and of course, so, you know, one of the big main events that the VIR is famous for is, of course, the IMSA series, and that is an endurance series. So it's a track that's really geared towards that. Of course, there's a lot of driver training and a lot of track days that go on here as well. So you do have that to consider. But since we are on the what is quote unquote the full course, even though it's not the longest course here at VIR. Yeah, of course, you got the Grand East and the Grand West course, which are considerably bigger, many more corners as well, which is why it's usually called the sort of baby Nordschleife of North America.
Yeah, and of course, one of those courses, the only time that I'm allowed on an iRacing broadcast to get away by saying the name bitch.
Oh, yeah, because that is a corner name.
Oh, wait a minute.
We're not just being crude. Oh my god, there's a pass going up on the screen for you now. That is going to be between the drivers of Salas and Norican. So that one really sneaked up on us. Vicente Salas really putting the work in off camera. We'll get the replay up on screen for you right now. Down towards the inside at or rather, that's coming out of Oak Tree Bend. So that's Salas already having made the pass coming down into there. Here comes Norican back down the inside towards Roller Coaster. trying to complete the pass back into here, but Salas has such momentum on that outside that he's able to just breeze all the way back past him.
Yeah, I want to go back because Jonas is going to have an incident, and this is going to be towards Oak Tree Corner. I think this might be the first time that what you talked about earlier on Oak Tree Corner is going to come true. Jonas Nakarian, entry into Oak Tree. Yeah, he's going to push well wide. Well wide, and he just keeps it off the tyre barriers, but as a consequence, Vicente Salas able to move ahead. I'm just going to have one more quick look on board, shall we, with Salas. This is him coming in towards Oak Tree Corner. There was once a time Blake Townend ended up with a 4-car wreck at this in the iRacing World Championship Grand Prix Series. The issue is sometimes you see an instant ahead of you, you forget to make your own braking points.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the situations we've had before here in Oak Tree Corner. It's such a difficult corner because you're braking while turning. Of course, you see the car go off ahead as well. And then that was the opportunity for Salas to make his way by. But he could have very easily just followed in the tire tracks here, just looking at the grass, at the barrier, just saying, oh, who's that in the barrier? Oh, wait, boom. I'm in the barrier now.
Yeah. I've seen it happen so often. I mean, Nordschleifer is a bit similar like that as well, that you see so many people who are almost reacting to other people, and you end up in a situation where 3 drivers into the Armco barriers, or the tyre barrier before you know. For Insante, actually a little bit slow there on the run for the first part of the S's, but he's 1 second ahead of Jonas Nakarian. This is the ongoing battle for P number 5. I will say Moran's doing what Moran's been doing all season long. Middle part of the race, he's stretched that gap up now to 3.4 seconds, Connery.
Going to look to stretch the gap in terms of the championship standings over Rico Alatalo. That one's definitely for sure. If you're wondering about the strength of field in this race, it stands at 4,320 right now. So still a very decent amount of points on offer despite the small grid size. But the fastest car that has set a lap out there so far today is not Morgan Morant. It's actually Giorgio Zagretti at 131.4 compared to 131.5 in terms of fastest laps there. So he is that to take home at least.
He is. And we are going to give you, ladies and gentlemen, a little bit of Racewell TV fan immersion, which starts right now.
Well, that was a lap on board with your second place runner, Giorgio Zagretti from Italy, as he works his way around the circuit. We've had a couple of issues, though, further down, because we've had Vicente Salas have major issues indeed. This is coming up to what is going to be out of turn 10, so coming up to Oak Tree Corner. Gets up over the curb and finds himself a nice little tyre barrier to get himself buried into, exactly how Ivan Hernandez did it a little bit earlier on. Look at that. Yeah, exactly. If Kalistani was still running, then he might make this race a little bit more spicy than it otherwise is right now. It's kind of like a chicken korma right now rather than a vindaloo. Let's just say that. Let's just put it that way if you know your Indian food. But with just like the huge events that have gone on over the past couple of weeks here on Racesport TV, we've had the 12 hours of Bathurst, which broke roadside viewing records, I suppose, with the Team Redline drivers, with Lando Norris, with Max Verstappen. Unfortunately, the car that had all the star drivers went out earlier on in the event, so in 20 minutes, so we weren't able to completely reap the benefits of that. But we had the NASCAR Peak Antifreeze Series as well, the Daytona 250, the first round of, the first time that a $100,000 championship is going to have a round featured here on Racesport TV and on the iRacing Esports Network, and that was an absolutely fantastic race. It was fantastic production as well. I just saw those guys at the start of the race with all the promotional videos, with how Evan was just carrying the show. This is sim racing now. This is where we want to be and where we just want to just continue to develop, because the show those guys put on was absolutely fantastic, not just from the driver's side but from the broadcaster side as well. Completely unbiased, of course. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. It's just really, really promising in terms of not just that series, but the other World Championship Series that we have here on the iRacing service as well. We have the Porsche World Championship Series, and I hope the production is just as good for that one. I will certainly do my part in terms of making that one so, but we also have the Rallycross Championship. We have the VRS GT Endurance World Championship as well. So no shortcomings in terms of the top tier action here on the iRacing service, but in this particular race, it's a hot lapping session. Let's be honest. Yeah. Yes, we will. And let's see what sort of lap time he makes once he comes across the line, because that'll give us a good bearing of what the state will be at the end of the race. Across the line, how much time does he gain? Okay, 0.3 of a second. That's it's not enough, but it's a gain. And you know, if he just finds just that little bit more, then he might just be in a position to challenge for P2 at the end of the race. And we can't forget that mistakes ahead might bring them back into the clutches of Danny Garcia Phil as well. Just having a look at the positions gained on all of the drivers here today, Ollie Croker is going to be top in terms of that particular standing. He's up 7 places, up into P7 after starting on, what is the second to last row of the grid, but second to last in terms of the standings. There we go. Yeah, Lombero Suarez, I'm not spotting any damage to his car, so I don't think we can use that to try and explain the pace differential between these two cars. Right now, Robbo all over the back end, to the left-hand side, then on the run down through 7, 8, and 9. And that's a pretty easy pass for the driver of the number 8 coming up through them. Sure, you get yourself still on the racetrack, come through 10-10. That curb is so dangerous on the outside there, because we've seen a good couple of drivers have trouble with that one already, but no problem for Boa, no problem for Suarez either, as that was just a quick spurt of a battle. I haven't ever been to Finland either, so maybe that's something we just have to plan at some point. If there's like a big sim racing event there. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm a lightweight at the best of times, so that might be dangerous for me to go to Finland. But yeah, but in terms of the sim racing prowess, it's absolutely fantastic. And I wouldn't be surprised though if we do actually have any live events up there, because they're a huge racing country, huge sim racing country as well. To not have a big event in Finland, international event, not just the finals of the Finnish Sim Racing Championship, then that would be doing a disservice to what is a very, very fantastic country on this service. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's gonna be huge. I bet like once I go into that arena for a commentary, or I hope I'm doing commentary for that. I just have to make sure I'm doing it with well. But just that would be crazy. It would be crazy for me, but it'd be crazy for the drivers as well. Just walking into that auditorium and just going, okay, this is really getting somewhere. Here we go. Finally, we have some action out there on the racing circuit. Inside a second, the battle for P number 5 between Nukarainen and Antti Levoska. The two Finns will potentially duel it out here in the final 2 laps of this event. Absolutely fantastic stuff. You can see that lap time delta with the mistake from Nukarainen. As I'll get Finnish names wrong all the time, don't you worry. But Antti Levoska up 4 seconds, and that is absolutely huge. And depending on the damage situation for the driver of the 7, that might just be close enough for Levoska to get by. Yeah, he might have had to use a few to defend from Oli Kroka earlier on in this event, so whether he has a few more left in the tank is yet to be seen. Very close close-up on the brakes in towards the roller coaster. We've had your race leader come across and take the white flag for the final lap of the race, and these guys will do so as well as they head their way out of the final turn. One lap to get this battle sorted against the two Finns. Nukarainen versus Antti Lavoska. What's the gap across the line? That is looking to be about 0.3 of a second between these guys right now, and Nukarainen made a little bit of an error on the entry to turn one there. Just gives up just a couple of bits of time as he decides to stretch his legs on the exit of the corner. Instead, through NASCAR bend, he's made another error as well, but somehow that gap is still pretty strong for him. Lavoska not able to capitalize just yet, heading their way out of the first sector now, up through 6A and 6A. The snake turns as Lavoska gets a huge twitch off the corner. That'll ruin all sorts of momentum on the way down towards Oak Tree Corner, but we do have to cut away because Morgan Morand is probably the easiest race that he has done all season. The Frenchman, the driver for the number 2, heads his way out of Hogpen Corner and across the line. Morgan Morand, it's an absolute Sunday drive for him as he heads his way across the line, but Antti Lavoska and Nukarainen, they are not close enough in towards a roller coaster from the perspective of Lavoska. So Nukarainen's doing just enough to hold on here. Into the braking zone they will go. Lavoska trying to take as much speed on that entry as possible, gets himself pretty close, but it's not going to be close enough for the number 6 unless Nukarainen messes up these final 2 corners, which he won't. So Nukarainen will hold on for P number 5. Lavoska just has to settle for P number 6. He's going to have a last gasp attempt at the line though, but only 0.2 of a second will separate them at that line. Yeah, Zagretti could just sit in the slipstream for the vast majority of the lap, but coming through the tighter and twisty sections, he just simply couldn't hold on. And once that draft had broken, Morgan Morand was off and away. And because of the issues that Danny Garcia-Filo had earlier on with getting down in towards turn number 1 through that first sector for the first time battling with Zagretti, just put him out of contention as well. He'll finish 13 seconds behind. But here are your official race results. Morgan Morand will win by 8.988 seconds right at the end there. Zagretti will hold on for P number 2 with Vilol rounding out your podium positions. Then you have Petri Kotovara with Jonas Nukarainen, and then Antti Lavoska bringing things down to P6, the Finnish trio P4, 5, and 6. And we've got Oli Foka P number 7 with Rob Boa P8 with Pablo Lambera Suarez 9th with Tim McIver P10 for Australia and New Zealand. Then you look back and then you've got more runners that are unfortunately out of this event. Vincenzo Salas 9 laps down in P number 11. Matteo Calistani looked to be a force to be reckoned with in this race, especially with that late qualifying effort, but unfortunately for him ends up 18 laps down after an earlier instance, with Stephen Gatesman also finding the tire barriers in P13. Claudio Candio P14 with Ivan Hernandez, the first driver to find a barrier, 21 laps down in P15. Well, join us just after this very, very short commercial break where we have the post-race show here on Racebot TV Friday primetime, streaming live on the iRacing Esports Network.
to the front bumper, and he hits him again now. Rayon Fowler into the outside wall.
Gonna pass nearly 3 cars down that front straightaway, and he's gonna get them all done with. What amazing!
Lee to the inside goes Logan Clapman is gonna touch in. Pit press sideways. What a save!
Look to the outside as Trunkett goes off. De Jong into second place.
I'm going for the switchback. Oh, pinpoint driving.
It's howling down to the inside.
Trying, there's contact though.
As wide left of the racetrack, Chris Leonard drives it back down underneath, and he takes that second spot right back. Joker goes to Garrett Lowe.
Garrett Lowe should take victory with all that contact.
He's going to try and make the move around the outside the parabolica. That's not going to work, but he's going to try and get the cut back here. Get the run out the parabolica. That's beautifully done there. Michael Schubert, there's a little bit of door banging as well.
Welcome back, everyone, to RaceSpot TV Friday Prime Time on the iRacing Esports Network. It was round 10 with the Formula Renault 3.5 Championship at Virginia International Raceway. I am Conor Medic, and joining me for the post-race show, it will be Will Vincent. And Will, you with us? Don't worry. But
I'm here.
yeah, exactly. But that race was, in a word, we do have to be honest, a little bit processional. We did have a little bit of spice at the end there, just to keep us interested. But Morgan Morans, that was arguably the easiest race he's had all season.
Yep, and you're right, Connery. What he did in that race, he was qualified well. The top two drivers qualified well, but then there's a bit of a gap, and as I said, 4 seconds separating the field in terms of qualifying. So Moran was always going to have it easy if he could survive the first 10 laps. And Giorgio Segretti really did try hard to keep that gap within 1 second, but the might of Moran in the latter part of that race really did show his muscle. The good news is 2 rounds left in the season. Monza and Spa, both of those tracks can create fireworks.
Monza and Spa, just pick 2 road courses where you just get the maximum attendance possible, and those are the 2 road courses that you'll usually end up picking. Absolutely fantastic stuff. Monza and Spa. I cannot wait for the next couple of weeks here on RaceSpot TV Friday Prime Time, but just continuing on a little bit of a discussion that we had, because we went into depth about the whole how big the NASCAR series is getting, how big the sim racing in general is getting with the Porsche World Championship, with Sim Racing Expo as well. This is just absolutely incredible, and in a way, once we get to Sim Racing Expo, that will become, at least for iRacing, the event of the year. Yeah, iRacing. I don't know if I'm allowed to know whether iRacing is going to be there or not, so I won't speculate. But yeah, it'll be a big event for sim racing at the very least, and it'll be really good to see after the majority of the World Championships will be entering their conclusion by that point. A way to really see what can happen next. What can ADAC Sim Racing Expo do to have a kind of end-of-year event? I wouldn't be surprised if Porsche used it as an opportunity for a big money race. Wouldn't be surprised to see a number of other kind of events going on as well. I think the one thing though, Connery, that Sim Racing Expo didn't do for me last year, didn't give the casual fan the chance to really get involved in the action. And I'd like to see that more, I think, and try and find a way of having, you know, a fan qualifier race or something. Yeah, that could possibly be the route they want to go on, or just a separate race entirely, just to have people at the event qualify and then get them racing up on stage, perhaps.
Yeah, that'd be good for one race.
Yeah, maybe not with the drivers that are in the quote-unquote serious competition there, but just to give the fans the experience of racing in that sort of atmosphere would be absolutely incredible. So definitely forward on that idea to ADAC to see if they'll be on board, because they've done special events like that before. Of course, they've had the celebrity races, like the show races. We've had the races where they had all of on a simulator that I can't mention though, but they had the races where they had all of the villages around and towns around the Nürburgring all put teams together and then race out there on the circuit. That was a really really good concept as well.
Yeah, I agree. Also, if you do end up at the Sim Racing Expo, there is one place where you need to go for dinner, and they basically serve you steak and you cook it yourself, and it's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. It's Piston Klaus, I think.
Yes.
I think it was called the Piston Klaus.
Yeah,
yes,
Piston Klaus.
Yeah, that was that was a little bizarre because they just brought out your steak on a hot stone, and you just like it's completely raw, so you had to just sit there for a couple of minutes just cooking your own steak, which is it was delicious, but it was a little bit unorthodox. But that's I believe that's just going to be all we have time for here today. We didn't have much to talk about during the race. We don't have much to talk about after the race either. But I've been Conor Maddock. That's been Will Vincent. And join us next week. And of course, the week after that, because those are going to be some incredible races at Monza and Spa. See you then.